Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Steven and I are together in the Cleveland studios. We've got another indictment to talk about, but first of all, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Just getting through it. But fortunately, I don't have 91 different charges against me in multiple states and with the federal government, so I guess things could be worse.
Things could definitely be worse. This one is, all right, so the most recent one is the Georgia indictment for attempting to
Election interference.
Election interference. Now, I know that Mark Meadows is trying to get it moved to the federal level because they want to get it pardoned once they stall past the election.
Yep.
And because that's not a well-veiled secret, is it? I mean, it's pretty...
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know where to go. We have a former president, who is still denying election, who is charged, like you said, 4 different times, twice by the feds. We were talking yesterday, like the New York charges seem like passé at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I asked you yesterday, like, do you even remember what those charges are? And most people don't. And look, it's all important. It all needs to be looked at. But, you know, like now you literally have to start ranking them, right?
Right.
You know, I was listening to a reporter the other day, and he said in their newsroom, they had to have their IT person create a Trump like court date overlay to all their calendars so that they could figure out like where to be and where to go for various,
similar to that.
you know. But if you think about it, right, like you've got, you know, charges in New York, you've got charges in Georgia, you've got the federal charges for election interference, which are in D.C. for January 6th, but then the federal charges for the documents I think that is in federal court down in Florida, right? Like, so, I mean, like like if you're covering it in person, you know, I mean, you got to figure out if you need to be in New York, Georgia, Florida, or D.C. It's aside from the logistics, right? Like just the, you know, the root of it, of what's behind it it's just astounding.
Well, and what's also astounding is his popularity has gone up. Every time he gets indicted, his base gets more fired up and more loyal to him, which we've been calling that. You know, I've been calling that for a while with these, which is why I thought you had to be smart about your if you were a prosecutor, especially in New York and Georgia, about how you wanted to approach this. And as much as people want to say that the politics and the actual criminal justice system shouldn't overlap, well, I live in the real world where they do overlap, right? And so now you have to think about your strategy, right? Which is why I thought, I wasn't a big fan of the charges coming out of New York to begin with. You know, it's not a very strong case. It's something that's, that's all
often
financial.
Yeah, it's often overlooked or not prosecuted, right? Like, and this seems like there were a lot of people in New York who were trying to sort of build their careers to a degree off of the popularity, and they rode that wave. So I don't know.
Off of the popularity of going after Trump.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Right, like a big figure and a person that's very disliked and everything that goes with Trump,
and has flat out insulted so many.
Yeah,
whatever.
and now
which shouldn't matter.
But it shouldn't, but it does. And these are real criminal charges. These are real laws on the books in New York, and they sure, go after him. But understand that you are going to be playing, in fifth chair violin in this orchestra, going after this guy. Right now, the other part too is the idea of going after Trump, right? Because Trump, MAGA, the Republican Party, GOP, his supporters are all saying that this is a witch hunt, and they're pulling out all the stops to stop him because he's the greatest threat to the deep state and whatever, right? But the reality is, this guy goes out and, like you said, goes after, attacks, insults,
more than half, basically the population, right? He like loves it, revels in it, right? He revels in the disdain and the just animosity and hate that people have for him, but he also like even more embraces the support, right? And as he goes and he gets more obnoxious and louder and starting all the way into 2015, talking about the Mexicans sending rapists and murderers and all this, and then his whole Muslim ban, and then just as he continued to go down the line, and you realize 10 years ago with another politician, all of those, any number of things that happened with Trump from the campaign through his first 18 months in office would have been, a death sentence for any other politician prior to Trump, right? But for Trump, it wasn't, right? And each utterance of something nonsensical, each accusation that came from Democrats or liberals or whoever, his lore only grew all that more, right? And I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but we'll go with it. Right, so it only makes sense now that as these charges come and there's more indictments and there's more media coverage of Trump on trial, right? That his support would grow, and his people would dig in even further and sort of bond behind this idea that this is just a giant witch hunt, and it's them versus Trump. Right, or it's us and Trump versus them, and now we have to support this guy even more because they're really going after him, completely ignoring the evidence that's there directly against him in each case. In some of these cases, you've got audio and video and written emails and text and also, and they're just now none of that matters. Oh, it's all witch hunt, right? Because you even have people out there saying, well, yeah, maybe he did do that, but so-and-so did it too, who's a Democrat. Right? Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, right? Hillary Clinton, right? Jeffrey Epstein, right? Just pull out all those names, right? And they immediately just turn around. It's not whether he did or didn't do something. It's that somebody else did it and got away with it. So then he should therefore get a pass. And going after him just because you don't like him, even if he actually broke the law, seems like it's against the Constitution. That is literally their argument.
Well,
right?
And in their defense, they believe it. I mean, they don't know the Constitution. They don't know what they're talking about. They're getting their information from only sources that confirm their bias. They're hearing Trump himself get up there and say, he literally said, I'm getting indicted for you. I mean, he's literally making himself a martyr.
Yeah.
And it's working.
Yep.
And what's funny is the evangelical crowd in Iowa is apparently who crushed him in the 2016 race is now over 2/3 in his camp. So Ted Cruz ran away with the evangelical crew in Iowa, and now they're all Trump. And I've been banging my head against the wall for years saying, I mean, it's pretty much what drove me from Catholicism was evangelicals getting behind a guy who is clearly not a practicing Christian. Now, I'm not one to judge, but if you're behind this guy because he's family values and he's, the closest thing to, and God's putting him in this place, it's like, once you believe that, you can believe anything. And I think these pastors know that if they go against Trump, their congregation will turn on them.
Right. And the fact that you've got pastors, reverends, whatever, that are even considering political implications to how they operate their church, just tells you how fucked up this all is. Right. We need separation between church and state. We've got church people literally trying to figure out how to bring politics into the church to appeal more to their congregation. You've got the influence of the church of evangelicals on policy. In the Trump administration, and just looking at some of the people that he had who we know are on the extreme end of some of this religious zealotry. It's just here's the other thing too, right? You're talking about evangelicals and banging your head up against the wall.
Yes.
I don't know why, because in reality, like what drove me from the church was the hypocrisy of the people in the church. Not even getting up to your pastors, your priests, or whatever. It was the people sitting next to me in the pews who have this religious, higher moral authority, but you see them outside the church, and it's like that ain't very Christian of you. That's not very,
100%.
And like that's what drove me from the church. And because my parents kind of confronted me on it, like, hey, like you can't just pull away. And I'm like, look, why would I want to be involved in a church where they say this on Sunday, but they do this on Monday? These two things can't coexist, right? And I was like, and I'm like, look, I believe in God, I believe in Christianity, the Bible, all that is great, but you're not going to sit me in a building with a bunch of people who are going to look down on me for whatever or criticize other people when they themselves, and it's not even. And it'd be different if they were asking for forgiveness for the sins, the mistakes that they made, or whatever. No, they're like that thing that I did was fully okay and fine, and I'm also this, extremely religious person, and I can justify my shit behavior with the button, right? Like, so it's not even asking for forgiveness, almost justifying their bad behavior through religion, and like, so it shouldn't be that big of a surprise that they're teaming with him. It's just like, well, he's obviously not one of you, but it's not that really that far of a stretch to realize like they don't really give a shit. So like
you're right.
The head banging that's the part that kind of I'm banging my head on while you're banging your head. Because I mean these people are so fake.
So yeah, it's a very good point. That once you're out the door, and sometimes when you're in the door, it's right in one ear out the other. But I was in church and I believe in Jesus, therefore I'm automatically going to heaven. Or I'm Catholic and I can just go ask for forgiveness, so I can, do whatever. And
right.
And before we move on to the next thing, there's also stories out there. I've heard multiple stories from multiple sources that Trump is not paying his lawyers.
Well, yeah. Now that's a big thing, right? And I'm glad you brought that in because like he got hit with a RICO charge down in Georgia, right? And when you're dealing with RICO charges, the whole strategy of the state when they hit you with the RICO charge is they want to cast a wide net, right? Like they're saying, all right, you've got this enterprise, this organization that is vast, right? And we don't have a ton of, we don't have a smoking gun that we can link you to for a murder or a bank heist or whatever, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to cast this wide net over your entire network, and we're going to put so much pressure on the entire network, right, that eventually there will be a weak link and it will break. And hopefully it's more than one. And as we go, the links get further and further up the chain, closer to the main cog, right? And so where that comes into play here is, you've got his former attorney, Jenna Ellis, right, who was his spokesperson or press secretary for a little bit or whatever. Then you've got Rudy Giuliani, right, and you've got Sidney Powell. You've got all the attorneys, right, and everybody else involved, and all these other co-defendants in this case down in Georgia. And they're all saying, like, hey, like, this is really expensive. These attorneys are, we can't just go get Joe Blow off the street. We need these expensive attorneys. Trump, you got to help us out with money, right? MAGA Inc., cut us a check, right? And Trump's like, fuck you, fuck that. If anybody's legal fees are being paid, it's going to be mine. Also, I'm not big on paying my legal fees, so we'll just see how that goes. But none of the money is going to any of you invalids down there, right? So then... what the state is banking on is Trump doing exactly what he's doing. Fuck you. I'm not paying for your lawyers. You all are adults. You all made your own decisions. Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, Mark Meadows, whoever, you guys are all adults. You're on your own. Figure it out. Right. So now some of those people are going to be like, all right, well, if he's not, like, if I did all this for him, throwing away a career, Now I'm facing criminal charges, right? Whatever we did to the country, even though I knew it was dog shit, I did it for him, and now this dude is going to hang me out to dry. Oh, I'm giving you all the dirt. You can give me immunity, reduce my sentence, whatever. Here's everything you need, right? That's the scenario that the state is looking for. Whether it's Jenna Ellis, whether it's Rudy Giuliani, whether it's Sidney Powell, whether it, like pick one of the other, 18 other people. There eventually some of those will break, not all of them, but they'll get enough out of them, out of that group that breaks, where they could take it all down.
Yep. And I mean, you're a lawyer, I'm not, but I got to imagine for any defendant, shit gets real when you have to go check into the court jailhouse. Right?
Yep.
I mean, you can talk big and, slow election, blah, blah, blah. When it's, you have until then to go get fingerprinted, mugshotted, and you're probably in and out the door.
Yep.
But you're going to the same jailhouse that
I think the real moment is arraignment.
Okay.
That's when I think you're right. The fingerprinting and all that is kind of like, oh, this is. But when you're in a courtroom and it's you, your lawyer, maybe one other lawyer, and you're facing a judge and a bailiff, and you've got prosecutors to your right, now all of a sudden it's holy shit. Like
right.
this
Every
is,
word I say is now
right.
part of a legal record, and
and you also are now trying to come to terms with what's going to happen, right? Because most defendants know, right, I'm going to jail. I did this, right? Now the question is, how can what's the least damaging way for me to get out of this, right? Once you're in that arraignment, because by that point in time, if you did it, right, which all of these people, they did it, right? Now it's, how the fuck am I going to get out of this with the least amount of damage done? Right now, if you're truly innocent, now it's just like I got to fight. I got to figure it out. You're trying to figure out that path to absolute innocence. But these people, I don't think any of them have any delusions that they're walking out of there, free and clear.
right.
So now it's just like, if I can't get out of here free and clear, which I feel is highly unlikely, then how the fuck am I going to get out of this? And that's when the wheels start turning about, well, what if I just tell them everything I know, right? Maybe they just give me immunity. Maybe I can get out of here free, whatever. But I think that's what's happening for a lot of these people right now. That, I mean, like you said, it's all fun and games when when it's a press conference,
Right.
right? Like when there's literally no accountability, and you've watched Trump say the wildest shit that you have probably advised him not to say. And then to your surprise, he gets away with it. So that emboldens you. You say more and more ridiculous shit, right? Like and now all of a sudden, right, you're in a courtroom, and now you realize it's back to life. It's back to reality.
Right. Right. So one other thing about Trump, he's not going to participate in the debate. I believe the debate's in Iowa. I believe that's why they were talking about it. There'll be 8 participants. He will not be there. I have thoughts about that strategy, but I keep going back and forth. Like, my first thought is, that's really smart of him. He's got a huge lead. All I do, if I'm Donald Trump, all I'm doing is bringing more eyes to the stage. And, until I'm losing, I'm just staying back and letting the other people, they're going to badmouth me, and then I'll just get up there and find a nickname for them
And just stop right there. That's it.
Yeah.
There is no benefit, plus side, upside for him to go and do that debate. None. This is, I would absolutely say it and tell him to do the same thing if I were working for him. Like, don't you dare. I don't even want you in the state of Iowa. Right? Like, I don't want you even in the same time zone. You be anywhere up and down the East Coast, or all the way on the West Coast, or not even in the country. But you go nowhere near the Midwest. Right? Like, you're going to act like you don't give a shit about this, and we'll do something to pull people's attention away.
And all you got to do is say, I would be there, but all these indictments are causing me to, not have the time to be there.
No. You don't even have to. No. Why? You don't want to draw attention to the bad.
Okay.
It's easy. You literally do exactly what's he. Do you know what he's doing? He's doing an interview with Tucker Carlson.
Oh, right.
Right? Like now, but
is it at the same time as the debate?
I don't know if it's at the same time. I would hope so, because that's exactly what I would do. I would do this big event and stream it on Twitter, X, or whatever. Make it available on YouTube. Do all that other stuff, and I'd do it exactly at the same time, right? And but I wouldn't talk about the debate at all. I would talk about everything else that's happening in my direction and my mission for the country. That's what I would do, and let fucking Ron DeSanctimonious and Vivek and all those other people duke it out.
I'm going to be very curious to see what the ratings are like for that debate, because if people go to watch it, another reason not to do it if you're Trump is you'll draw more eyes to your opponents because your ratings will be better with Trump on the stage. That's just, I think, obvious. If this thing is heavily viewed without him being there, that will say one thing to me. If essentially nobody watches it, then, because if it's heavily viewed, mostly by Republicans, I would assume, that would say to me there's people out there who are fishing for option B. And
I think there are people that are out there
fishing.
And I share your same interest on what sort of ratings that the debates get, because, Ron DeSantis is just not performing well. Vivek Ramaswamy, he is definitely going up. Listen, I don't like him. I think that he has, he's a private sector guy that's jumping into this, like he's trying to take the same path as Trump, and he's doing exactly what I said Ron DeSantis should do.
I was about to give you credit.
He's doing, and look what's happening. There is no fucking reason that Vivek Ramaswamy should be anywhere near Ron DeSantis in this race, right? He's got so many things stacked against him as to why he should, one, just his name's Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
His name, his skin, right? Race, all that other stuff, right? But he positioned himself and he said, fuck all that, who cares, right? This is exactly the analysis that him and his team did. At the end of the day, if I go in hard and fast that I am on their side for them, and that the Democrats, liberals, that they're the enemy, and I support the things that they want to hear, and I come out and I do it in a way that gives President Trump props. I stay away from the criticism of him, but I don't support anything that he's doing that he's being accused of. But I support him on the policy issues, right? If you want to say policy, right? The culture war issues.
Yeah, I would say.
And take those, but actually give them some depth, right? And then I don't focus on attacking a Ron DeSantis or a Nikki Haley or a Tim Scott. I just say this is what my platform is, and I repeat it with enthusiasm, and I get out amongst the people, right, and show them that I am sincere and that I'm looking out for them. I'm on their side, right? And that's it, right? Because now that's his whole platform, right? And Ron DeSantis, he could have done the same thing and said, I'm just going to focus on helping the state of Florida, right? But then getting out and going out and meeting people and all that other stuff, but just stay on the platform. Right, but instead he got into this whole thing about woke, right? Like every other word out of his mouth is woke, right? He starts going after Donald Trump. He creates this whole Trump versus DeSantis thing, and he's losing, right? And he's fighting the wrong battle, right? And Vivek is doing exactly what I said what Ron DeSantis should have done, and he's just going straight up.
I want to go back to a previous Ron DeSantis advice that you gave. That I think you were dead right on. You told him, stay in Florida, shut the fuck up, let this all mess sort itself out, and then be the conquering hero in the 11th hour.
Yep.
And boy, I bet he wishes he did that now. Now he's running all over the country. He's become a punchline. I mean,
yes.
as qualified as he is in terms of experience and whatever. He's a punchline now, and he has way less charisma than I thought he did.
Right, which is crazy because you said he didn't have any, right? So, I mean, it's just, well, no, you didn't say he didn't have any. I mean, it's there were plenty of people who told me, between Twitter and just people that I know in the political sphere, that said he is so bad. And I was the one who stood on the, if he does this, right, and you just let his resume speak for itself, I'm telling you, and they're like, yeah, but he's never going to do that. You don't understand. He's going to slit his own throat. And I said, there's no way he could be that dumb. Like he's got a fucking path to the White House. And they're like, just wait and see. And I said, okay. Right? And they were right.
When you can't control your ego, all the other shit doesn't help, or it doesn't save you.
Man.
Well, then again, Trump can't control his ego, and he's that.
Well, I mean, he's not exactly in a great position right now. I
Sure.
mean,
Oh, no.
you know, I mean, like he's got to deal with 2 federal judges, one that definitely don't like him, or doesn't buy into his bullshit. I'll say that. It's not right to say whether they like him or not, but they don't. She's definitely not buying into his legal team's tactics or his tactics in the media. He's got, again, we keep referencing New York, but the charges in Georgia are probably the worst case scenario, right? Because there's a lot of actual hard evidence that does not bode well for him and his 17, 18 other co-defendants,
Right.
co-conspirators.
One thing that I heard also, and I'm not trying to blindside you with this, little foreshadowing there, but I was hearing an argument made that the 14th Amendment could cause him to not be eligible to run for president, because if you held an elected office and then rebel against the government, you cannot hold future office. Something to that effect. Okay?
Yes. So I've heard this argument. I got to think about it.
Okay.
Look, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, where that's my main focus and study. So I think, let me see what some other people a little smarter than me are going to say on this, because I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I never even thought of that angle until I heard someone talking about it. But
yeah,
that's interesting.
I saw it and I looked into it, but there wasn't enough analysis around it for me to help kind of figure out my thoughts on it.
Okay.
And this is one of those things where, look, I have no problem telling you I don't know, because we ain't seen something like this.
Right.
Not in the last 100 fucking years.
We are in such uncharted territory that I don't know if that's even an option. But I mean, again, his crew will go nuts and claim that now you're weaponizing the Constitution. Like, that Constitution that you love so much, even though you haven't read it
ever. And look, I think there aren't enough people who are willing to say, I don't know, and I need to figure out what my actual opinion on this is based off of, relevant factual information. So, I mean, what I could tell you is just based off of the charges and what's in the Constitution, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you're saying
now,
you don't know. I know less than you on this one. So. I'm not trying to make
I'd have to look
hurt.
again. Yeah, I have to look again at what he specifically was charged with on January 6th, because I don't think that they hit him with a sedition charge.
I don't know.
Right. I think if he got the sedition charge, yes, absolutely. If found guilty, but if not, and it's just election interference, I think you're going to have it's a stretch to make that claim.
Gray area,
right? Like, so I have to look at exactly what the charges are to then compare it to the text in the 14th Amendment, and then sort of see what sort of hoops you got to jump through to get there, and then listen to the guys that are smarter than me and see how they get there and see if my path is right, and then I give you an opinion.
Truthfully, if you're Trump, you're then hoping it goes to the Supreme Court quickly, which it might actually, and you're counting on the court having your back. Whether or not that's legit, I'm sure that's where his mind is.
Yeah.
Speaking of January 6th, a bunch of the Proud Boys got sentenced, and some of the sentences were pretty lengthy. I think one guy is recommended up to 30 years.
Were they sentenced, or were the recommendations provided by the DOJ?
Well,
then the judge will make the final determination on the sentencing.
I think in a couple of cases the sentencing has occurred, and I know one guy one guy, I think his name was Chris Worrell. I looked it up the other day, but I forgot. I think his name was Chris Worrell. He's in Florida on home release.
Naples, right?
Yep, and he split.
Yeah.
So,
and there's like, well, he's got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and when he was in jail, like they denied his treatment. I'm like, so why, like, where'd he go? Right? Like, how does that explain that, like, his disappearance?
oh no, I don't think.
No. I'm not. That's just my, like, so, you know, he disappeared. He did disappear, but, you know, the messaging behind, like, from his wife and everything else was, well, he was really mistreated. He was mistreated while he was in jail. He's got cancer. He was denied treatment in jail. So, you know,
They sent him out on home release.
right? He was home on home release. So that, like that, they're saying that's why he left. And I'm like, so
No, he skipped because
he left because he didn't want to go to jail. Now, if you're saying his reasoning is he didn't get a treatment in jail for the diagnosis, okay, but like, what type of treatment is he going to get as a fugitive on the run? Right? Like,
Well, I mean, that's going to be his defense. You're right.
you know, like that's just what I'm trying to figure. I'm not sure, like, if that may explain it, but I don't know if I just feel like he may have hurt his chances with the whole cancer thing, if it was serious, by going on the run. Because I think, like, it's one thing when you're being held. It's another thing when you're convicted and in federal prison. Then I'm pretty sure at that point they'll give you the appropriate treatment. Now, I shouldn't say I'm
Probably
pretty
not.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we don't have the best. We don't treat our prisoners the best. But I don't know. I have to imagine that if they're talking about gender-affirming care in prison, then getting care for cancer has got to be on the books, right?
I would imagine.
You know, I mean, and that's not saying that people shouldn't get gender-affirming care in prison or whatever. I mean, that's a different debate. But if there's even an argument for that, then it's got to be based on that you can get other forms of medical care. And I have to imagine having cancer is something that is on that list,
Right.
of things that they take care of. Once you're, I could see it not happening leading up to, and I'm not saying that it's right, but it's different once you're actually convicted.
Right.
You know.
Well, we'll see what happens when the guy turns up, if he turns up. I mean, who knows?
Right.
So this week, switching to the Democrats, there was a summit at Camp David between delegates from South Korea and Japan, which is like the first time in a very long time.
20 years.
20. And this, I keep doing the whole, what did it feel like leading up to World War II talk. And this is one of those things that, okay, now Korea and Japan are kind of cozying up to the U.S., which is going to make China respond in some...
South Korea.
What's that?
Well,
Did
it's
I say,
important.
Did I say North?
No, you just said Korea in general.
so- yeah.
But the reason why I'm saying that is, like, we need to be very intentional with our words, language, because part of the reason why the summit happens is, China, Russia, North Korea are all starting to have a more open relationship, praising each other, and like coming closer together, not only from a military standpoint, but in the financial world as well.
Right.
And South Korea, Japan being more democratic nations, and saying, all right, well, we're not going to get in bed with China and Russia and North Korea, so we can set aside our differences. We'll have a summit with the U.S. and we can help protect each other. Now, for some people, if you don't know the history there, Japan ruled over Korea in the early 20th century,
Right.
and they were dicks the whole time. I mean, they sent all the Korean boys to the Japanese military, and they were they treated them very poorly, and often sent them into very bad situations to die. Then they took the Korean women and had them as comfort women and prostitutes at very young ages, early teens, and just gave
Sure.
the life of a sex worker in the early 1900s in Japan. Just
Not great.
Use your imagination.
Yep.
So that happens. Japan eventually, Korea gets their independence. They split North and South, but Japan has been very sort of had a revisionist history sort of view of their rule over Korea at that point during that time. And South Korea is like, fuck are you talking about? You literally took all of our children and either sent them to die in war or made them prostitutes. You guys need to actually apologize for that in a real way. And Japan's like, you guys are kind of overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. We're cool now. And that's sort of been the back and forth between the two countries over the last, 50 plus years.
Yeah, and that's, again, a lot of people don't know that, but it's a really ugly history between Japan and a lot of, certainly the Korean Peninsula and then other countries, because Japan was very imperialistic. I mean,
yes.
It's just how their culture was.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, and it's important that I think we break it out like that, because there are people who are like, this is not that big of a deal. Japan and South Korea have always been the best of friends, so why is this a big deal? And it's just like, it ain't what you think it is.
No. So you said you wanted to talk about the Democratic strategy.
Right.
Tell me what it is, because I have no idea.
Yeah. I guess I just want to take time to sort of reiterate, they don't have a strategy. And if they do, it's terrible, and no one knows what it is, and it's not working. And they have an opportunity right now, whether you want to say it's the DNC or the leaders of the Democratic Party, whether they have official DNC titles or not. And what you're not seeing from the Democrats is them pushing back at what's happening on the other side, right? I think what their strategy is, look, just let the Republicans eat themselves, and then we'll come out and we'll win this election in 24, no problem. And look, the problem is the Republicans are eating themselves, right, cannibalizing themselves to a degree, right, between your DeSantis and Trump crowds. Like, they are just going after each other. It's vicious on social media. It's vicious in the actual media. This will cause damage to that side. I don't even know if you want to call it the Republican Party anymore, but the battle between Trump and DeSantis will leave scars. And the issues with Trump and his indictments, again, he's in 4 different states. 2 of the indictments are federal. Like, that's going to be problematic. And you can, if you're Democrats, what they're doing is saying, just let that shit ride out, and then we'll be able to take advantage on the other side. But they need to come out, and they need to take firm statement, because, like, the Trump and the MAGA and the DeSantis crowd, they're still lobbing bombs over the fence at, the Democrats and progressives and basically anyone who doesn't agree with them. But they're doing it, it's not as nearly as pointed and focused as it was before, because now all the infighting with that side. So the Democrats need to come out and push back and, like, look, everything that you're seeing here with Trump just comes to show you that chickens come home to roost, or whatever, right? Like, you have to, and as they lob some of this bullshit out, you have to push back against it, right, with facts, like real facts and data. Like, you can't just throw word salad at it. Like, you need to come back and combat it with actual information, and they're not doing it. And
well, here's what they are doing that I've seen, and I think it's very much a losing strategy, is they're basically saying, look at how good the economy is under Bidenomics. So basically saying, we're forcing Biden down your throat, which I don't know anyone who wants to see Biden run again other than Joe and Jill Biden. And they're trying to say to you, the economy's doing great, the economy's doing great. But if you're, that's such an out-of-touch Washington mentality. Because you're like, look, unemployment's low. Go to the bar down the street from me and tell people how great the economy's doing, and they will tell you you're out of your fucking mind. They might be wrong. If you look at the economic indicators, you might be able to say Biden's actually done a great job. Inflation didn't hit the U.S. as bad as it hit most of Europe. You can say all these things, and anyone who is not a Biden fan is going to look at you and go, you're out of your fucking mind. Fair or not?
Look, I think anybody that, anyone who lives in look, the economy right now and the market and all, these are all different entities.
Right.
And so the economy and the indicators that you see on CNBC are not the same as the indicators that the average person walking around on the west side of Cleveland is looking at, thinking about in their day-to-day, right? And that's also different than what guys like our friend Market Bin are looking at when they're making decisions on how to move their money within the market. These are all three different things, and Democrats, Biden, his administration, whatever, are completely out of touch with the other two, right? The market and Market Bin and all those guys really don't give a shit about the other two, only except for how it impacts what's going on in their market, right? Because they don't look at, they don't care about fairness to the people and everything else. It's just like, how is this political decision going to impact the markets? Like, that's their thing. And it's not fair to say that they don't care, but they don't care.
Also, they've got talking points for every economic point you make. You make a point that unemployment's low. Oh, those numbers are bullshit. Those numbers don't count the people who gave up on looking for a job because the economy is so bad. That was talking point for unemployment going way down under Obama. They'll bring that gem right back up. And just, there's a one-liner for everything.
Yeah, but it's less about, I think you have to, you can't dismiss the average person on the street, what they're feeling and how they're experiencing this period in time. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. And so you need to hear what they're saying, because it's not aligning. If it's not aligning with the actual policy that's coming out from the administration, whether it's Biden or anyone's, right? Then you have a disconnect between the two, and that's problematic. And we've had that for an extended period of time in a lot of different instances. But at the same time, it could align, right? It could, based off the experience on the ground, the administration's policies could be the right policies to help impact that in a right way. But the problem is that it takes time for those policies to actually take effect so people can feel it. And so the complaints that you get from the people on the ground, they match the policy, but the complaints are still there because people can't feel it yet, right? Like, it's not an instantaneous sort of win, right? But you still have to look at all those different factors closely to figure out, are we responding the right way to what's actually happening on the ground? Yes or no, right? And then if it's yes, then, hey, guys, it's going to take time. If it's no, then, all right, what do we need to change?
But I'm also trying to emphasize, and I think you're saying the same thing, the Washington bubble, the disconnect between the Washington bubble and the person on the street in Cleveland, Ohio, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is so bad that Biden's probably hearing, "You're doing a great job, Mr. President. Unemployment's an all-time low. Great. I'm sure people will love me for this." Not in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, yeah. That's just it. Just again, going back to the strategy, it's not so much. I wasn't coming at it from what should Biden do from a policy standpoint, or even what he should do from a media standpoint. Well, no, I should say it should be more about what he's doing from a media standpoint, and then the rest of the Democratic Party following his lead. So I think he does need to come out and say more about what's happening to Trump. I think he does need to come out and talk more about some of the claims that are being made by some of the Republican candidates that are running, right? I think he needs to come out with solid information to combat that across the board and let that set the tone for the rest of the party. Right, so that your different people in in Congress and the Senate and your talking heads, right, like when they go on the Sunday shows, that everyone is saying the same message, and they're saying it in the same way, and that they're making the same reference points, and it's a very coordinated resistance against what's coming from the right, because their message isn't necessarily coordinated, but it's all the same. Right, and they're in whether it's Trump or DeSantis or Vivek, or and then everybody else doesn't really much matter in that. People, I think, just like the idea of Chris Christie, but in reality, he's polling at 2%, so I don't think they like him that much. But they're all of those candidates that I just named are all attacking Democrats with the same sort of issues.
Yep, the anti-woke.
Right, and all the anti-wokeness. And so what needs to happen is that Biden and everyone down the hill, they need to come out with the information to combat that, but it needs to be real and solid, and they need to be firm behind it. But they need to understand how to message that in a way where you're not shoving it down the throat in an uncomfortable way, right? Like, you have to ease it in there, right?
All right.
But you know what I'm
How
saying.
long we let you go with that?
But you get what I'm saying, though,
I do.
right? Like
I do.
they like, look, you need a strategy, you need tact, and I'm not seeing it. And they can talk about saying that they have a strategy, but we all see that that's bullshit.
Right. And we also see that no one is running against Biden as a Democrat in a primary as of right now.
But I think that's the problem.
I think it's a huge problem. But for Biden, it's a huge problem because if someone did, I will bet you they opened polling very well. Because I think as much as people, voted for Biden in 2020 because it was we can't take this Trump guy anymore. There's a lot of people who are just going to say, I can't vote for either of these ancient white guys.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why there's a lot of people out there who don't want to vote for either guy. I think you're right that if there were a Democratic challenger, that would push Biden. But again, I'm operating from the idea that that's not going to happen, right? Since you don't have that push, right, and we know it's not going to happen because the DNC has made it so that it won't happen. But what you need to see, though, right, like recognizing that there's not going to be someone to push Biden to make him address issues, then he needs to be proactive in addressing issues down the line, right, and kind of in throwing up a large defense shield now, right? Like while there's a ton of attention on Trump and while there's a ton of attention on DeSantis going the wrong direction, he needs to fortify his position down the line on all these various things. And you do that with showing facts and data and support, right, and getting that information out there to make it even harder for the other side to combat, right? Get the real numbers out there. Make sure that they're in very clear charts and graphs that people can read and understand, right? And get that information out there en masse right now. We know what their arguments are. We know what their platform is, right? So get all the information that pushes back against it and lay it out there now. So then as you whittle them away, and you're focusing, you can say, hey, I've been consistent this whole time telling you this is what the issues are and this is how we're going to address them. That's what I would do. And I think that if he does that, then they end up in a good place.
But, yeah. Well, he's now in Maui because of the fires out there, which I don't have anything to say other than my heart goes out to those people. I mean, it sounds like one of the worst fires in U.S. history. I don't want to sound flippant, but when the Canadian wildfires were going on, my thought was environmentally this is terrible. It's a bad thing, but I wasn't thinking about massive loss of life. And this fire in Hawaii apparently killed over 100 people, and they're saying there's unaccounted for people that are just never going to be accounted for.
Well, I mean, you've got 1,000 people that are missing, and you've got 100 confirmed deaths, and it's just there's a big concern that a lot of those that are missing could be kids. And I don't know exactly what happened, but apparently they sent the kids home early from school for some reason, and then the fires happened, and so there's this awful idea that like there's a lot of kids who might have burned at home.
It's hideous.
It's awful.
Hideous. I didn't want to talk about it, but you can't.
It's important. Like, listen, there's a number of different ways that you can give. Like, please don't let politics get in the way. Give to Red Cross, give to some of these nonprofits that are there on the ground that have, that are FEMA certified and everything else because they need resources. It's a hard place to get to. It's a hard place to get resources to. You sending dried canned goods, that makes things harder for them. Send them money so that they can deal with the logistics of getting people the supplies that they need. Don't get caught up in the conspiracy theories that it was space lasers from the government to make money, to take the land from the poor people to give to the rich people. That's a lot of bullshit coming out of the Trump, MAGA, conservative, conspiracy, QAnon camp. Those people are looking to, they're doing all this on social media, right? Like they're not coming out and saying this, like they're all doing it on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok in places where they can monetize their thoughts. Right. Like, and so the crazier the thoughts, the more reaction that they get, the more they get paid, especially on Twitter. So be very careful of people coming out with radical, crazy claims on Twitter, and they've got 40, 50, 100,000 million followers. Like, there's a reason why they're trying to drive people to their pages. So just be careful with that. try to put the politics aside, help these people. It's going to be a very long road to recovery. I don't even know if you can call it recovery because that place is not going to be the same.
Right.
Whatever there is going to be different, and it's going to have to be. And hopefully we can get enough support behind them so that it's less of an awful situation.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we still have a war going on in Ukraine, and now Poland and Belarus are starting to bow up and get near their borders. The president of Belarus, whose name I won't try to pronounce, said basically that if we feel we've been attacked in an aggressive way, that we're willing to use nukes, and they have them. And again, I'm not trying to be alarmist guy, but this scares the shit out of me.
Look, this war has definitely gone on longer than most anyone thought, and it is escalating. And you bring up references to World War II when we talk about this a lot, and there's a lot. There are definitely a lot of similarities. I've always said that. I've said since you've been saying that, though, there are some huge differences that change, I think, how this will all go down. But the reality is that you still have a very scary situation there between what's actually happening on the ground right now, currently, with Ukraine trying to push Russia out.
Right.
Unclear on what's happening with Russia. It sounds like they're taking some heavy losses, but they have a lot of people. But at some point, how long are you going to be able to send in waves of people to get killed? And not have people saying, if I'm going to die, then I'm going to try to die. I'm going to die trying to get rid of you so I don't have to die out there.
Or getting out of Russia.
Right. I think they are, kind of
pretty good at stopping that.
Yeah, putting the clamps down on people trying to get out for this very reason. And also they don't want people to get out of Russia because then people will have access to other information.
True.
So it's an ugly situation. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of input on it because, we're just another critical situation where it's uncharted territory.
Right.
It's just like, we've had wars before, but you're talking about World War III, multiple nuclear powers, and with everything that we have going on right now, you're worried about China and Taiwan. You're worried about North Korea. You've got Russia and what they're doing. You've got the war with Europe, but then there's also where does the U.S. fit in and all that. Like, this is just, this is approaching a DEFCON 1 sort of situation.
That's, okay.
And
you're kind of agreeing with me.
And no, I am. And it's just, I don't know. I don't think we can go off of history. I think we have to look at history and glean from it whatever we can. But I don't know if there's a roadmap on this one.
I completely agree with that because the world is so different than it was in World War II. And then the world got kind of reshaped after World War II. And the fall of the Soviet Empire and everything else. And there's so many.
You're going to say the fall of Khan.
Fall of Khan! All right. Let's use that as a segue. I don't know how that becomes a segue to Elon Musk and X. Which,
Elon!
You know what? That's exactly how it plays out. What? It just sounds dumb for me when I say I put something out. I put a post on X.
Yeah, I don't know. I just call it Twitter X. I don't know, whatever. It's usually literally what I say. Twitter X. I don't know, whatever. The reason why I brought it up though, so he's removing the block feature from it, and but he also a lot of people push back, and a lot of his celebrity friends, James Woods pushed back on it. Other people that he has openly shown support for have pushed back on him, saying, "Hey, like, removing the block button is kind of a dangerous move because there are crazy people out there, and if they've got access to my timeline, they've got access to me, and that could put me in danger." Right?
Like, I didn't even think of that angle. I was just thinking more of harassment.
Right, but that's the angle, right? That's the big part of the reason. Like, it's actually required. A block button is required for an app to remain on the Apple App Store, and that's been in place for a few years now. Because they view it as a safety feature, right? Like, so if they remove the block button, then all the people that, and listen, we've blocked probably over 100 different accounts for various reasons.
How many times have we been blocked? ballpark?
I don't know. Probably.
Okay.
I mean,
Hey, you don't know, right? You don't get a notification saying you've been blocked.
There's a few that have been pretty demonstrative about blocking us, me or whatever. I can think of 3 cases where they wanted to make sure that I knew that they blocked me.
Okay.
And so typically what I do with that is literally nothing. I don't acknowledge it. I don't say anything about it, which I know infuriates them because, like, even though they block, they can still go back and look at us, but we can't see anything about them. But anyway, the main point is that, I'm in the camp of pretty much everyone else on his app that this is a bad idea for them to remove the block button. Now, what he's saying is, like, well, you can mute them. You won't be able to see what they post. And then you don't have to deal with them anymore. It's like, but if they can...
That's exactly your point, though.
But if they can still see me and have access to me and see what I'm doing or my movements or my patterns or whatever I'm posting, and then use that to piece that together to... Even if it's not to physically attack me, but they can use that information to continue to mount a campaign against me in some way, shape, or form, then I just lose control over that, and it's a control. There's no reason for them to take it away, right? Like, but he's doing it because for some reason I think he thinks that it helps something about his metrics.
You know, I know this is not so much a Twitter thing; it's more of an Instagram or TikTok thing. But I'm having thoughts about if you're one of those girls that tries to be a social media influencer, and you get some creep who's like, I know where, whatever, and that guy's stalking you online.
Right.
And now...
Like, you don't want him...
Like Livy Dunn does not need... She needs the ability to block people. I guarantee it. If you don't know who Livy Dunn is, she's a gorgeous gymnast from LSU. She's got like a zillion followers and whatever. But I'm sure she has dealt with some real creeps over her time.
Yes.
And I'm sure she blocks them. And, again, she's on Instagram mostly, I think, so...
But... Thanks.
Or TikTok, I don't know.
Okay. But just yes, that's a reason. And if she finds someone aggressive or she is creeped out by them, then those people should no longer have access to her. And I think that is perfectly fair.
Yes.
For her to expect. So to take that, on Twitter because, well, I just don't think it's and I guarantee his reasoning is somehow I guarantee you that everyone blocking everyone that they don't like somehow hurts that algorithm or some sort of metric, right? So if he can figure out some sort of go-between, then he's going to do it because somehow he thinks that'll boost the value of the overall app, right? And we know that he wants to turn this app into this sort of all-inclusive sort of thing where you do all your banking and maybe you run everything through it, right? From all
the more reason to be able to block people,
right? But I think he's saying he wants to open up the world of commerce or whatever. Right. So
I'm all about free speech. Okay, well, great.
It's just I don't know. It's just something to be aware of. I don't know if it's going to happen still or when it's going to happen. He does things in his own way, but it's just something to sort of watch out for. And they've actually made it hard. Like I went to go unfollow someone because I couldn't, and I don't know. I think we asked maybe. I don't know how we ended up following this person, but I didn't want to follow them anymore. And they made it a little bit harder to figure out how to go and unfollow someone.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it's just like they're trying to make it. They want people to stay they want as many people connected to as many people as possible, and they want to remove the ability for you to sort of basically create your own silo. Right,
yep.
Which grand scheme of things, I don't know, maybe for the greater good, that's maybe what you want, but at the same time, no, because people are fucking crazy.
And by the way, you said a while ago that if we get Stormy Daniels on the show, she was coming on the show. While that offer stands, if Livy Dunn hears this and wants to tell us about her experience in social media, she's coming on the show.
Okay.
All right. Last thing real quick. Michael Orr is claiming that he was tricked into signing essentially a... not power of attorney. What's the thing they had on Britney Spears? I'm drawing a freaking
conservatorship.
Conservatorship. Thank you. Jeez, straight, stone sober, folks. This is not Jim with whiskey this time. Conservatorship. So he's saying basically that he got duped by them. Now, I remember seeing an interview with Michael Orr way back when the movie The Blind Side came out. So if you don't know this, Michael Orr's the feature of the movie The Blind Side, starring Sandra Bullock, made a bunch of money, and now he's basically saying, I should have gotten a piece of that, and I don't know why he didn't. I also remember him, clearly saying that he didn't like the movie because it portrayed him as some oaf who needed Mrs. Toohey to come out and teach him how to, stop being so soft and be, pretend you're whatever. But you have one story about Mrs. Toohey. When he first got drafted by the Ravens, she went to Joe Flacco and said, "You need to get rid of the ball quicker so my son can do his job better." And Joe Flacco, established quarterback for the Ravens, has a rookie's mom telling him how to do his job. He makes a comment to Michael Orr, and Michael Orr tells his mom, "Stay out of this shit. You can't do that." And her response was to go back the next day and look for Joe Flacco saying, "Where's the tattletale? I want to talk to the tattletale." That was a great story.
It is, and it's, yes, I've got my thoughts on that, but look, I don't know enough about it. I don't know whether they adopted him or not, or what they had him sign, or what they didn't sign. I don't know what the split was on the movie, what sort of like that, and that's what makes it hard, like to figure out like who's right or wrong, and that's why you take this up to court or someone, right? I mean, I've seen people out there, oh well, Michael Orr's broke and now he's trying to go find money, and I'm like, I don't know, Michael Orr made a lot of money as a player, and doesn't seem to me to be the type that would go spend it wildly on stupid things. Although you never know.
You never know, but I agree. He seems like he's got a pretty good head on his shoulders.
Yeah, so I don't know. And then about her trying to teach him, so the story that you told about his adopted mom or whatever, like I've heard that as well, and I think I heard it from Joe Flacco. Maybe I think Joe Flacco told
I heard it from either him or Michael Orr. It was one of those.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't hear it from Michael Orr. I'm almost positive that it was Michael or Joe Flacco telling the story, and what I would say is where I think in the movie they didn't portray him. I agree with his sort of take on how they portrayed him, but I 100% believe that if that woman had the balls to go to Joe Flacco and tell him, hey, you need to get rid of the ball quicker, then I have no doubt that she had no problem going up to a high school coach or a college coach and saying whatever. Now, he may not have needed her to say it, but she don't seem like the type, like if you've seen an interview with the actual mom, she don't seem like the type where like her husband, Michael, Joe Flacco, Jim Hart, no one was going to tell that woman to like go away. She's just not that type. So I think it was probably they could have done a better job of doing a better representation of Michael Orr, but they probably did a pretty good representation of Sandra Bullock.
Well, but no, I think you're probably right, and it's kind of a sad thing to me that this was such a feel good story, and then you peel back a couple layers. I mean, I understand why they portrayed her as the matriarch who changed his life. Hollywood does that shit. And I understand if I'm Michael Orr, I'm going, yeah, okay. But then it's, wait, you made how much money off this? Tui's? Yeah. And I got zip? We got to talk. And that's just, the courts will play out and we'll stay with this if it becomes interesting, but I just had to put it out there. I just wanted to tell the tattletale story.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it. I got to go.
We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram, Twitter, X, and Threads, and we're done. Thank you.